Hey guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about how to study the ICD-10-CM coding guidelines. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue, I'm a medical coder. Okay, I have been getting so many emails lately. Blue, why do you always say to read the coding guidelines? My biggest bit of advice when I'm talking about studying and things like that is that you read your coding guidelines once per week, the entire thing when you were in school. And if you are trying to brush up, if you're a veteran coder and you're trying to brush up, it is a good idea to read the guidelines in their entirety at least once per week. And I always tell people you don't have to do it all in one sitting, but I still get the question, why? Why do you have to do this? I just want to learn about the coding part. Just show me some coding and I'll learn it from there. No, you're not going to learn it by learning how to look up codes. Looking up codes and understanding what you're doing is two completely different things. Now, I share my information on my channel because I really want you guys to be successful. I have nothing that I am trying to sell you guys. I'm just trying to give you tips on how to be better and how to make medical coding not so difficult. When people are avoiding the heavy lifting, like reading the coding guidelines and understanding what they mean, it leads to a lot of problems. So in order to alleviate some of that uncertainty and some of that anxiety of like, I can't learn this. Yes, you can. It is literally just taking it one step at a time. The first step is getting familiar with reading. You know, we as medical coders read constantly, all the time, every single day. This is not something that you can get out of. Reading is a part of this work, and it's a part of this line of employment, is that we always read. The side benefit of reading these guidelines once per week while you're in your program is that you're going to become faster at reading. Now, depending upon where you're getting your guidelines from, in the Optum 360 coding book, which, by the way, this is my lovely guest today, the Optum 360 ICD-10-CM coding book, there are many different publishers. This just happens to be the one that I really love, and this is a publisher that I trust. This is not an ad for them, but I will say that of all of the different coding manuals that I've come across, this is the one that I trust the most because it has a lot of really good information and it's got so many helpful tips that a lot of the other publishers don't have. So that's my little piece on this, and I will leave the link for Optum 360, the website, in the description box below if you're interested in ordering books. They always have sales all the time. And not only that, they have other helpful books for medical coders, which is really great. So without further ado, depending upon where you are getting your guidelines from, I know the AAPC has it in their book. Obviously, all the publishers carry it in their books, but the font size may be different. So with Optum, it's 34 pages, and I recommend, if you don't want to read it all in one sitting, right? I totally get it. It is a lot, and yes, the font is small. But you can download them from the CMS website, and you can view them for free there as well. You can even download them for free. And so you can make the screen bigger if you need to. That would be what I would suggest if it's so bothersome for you. If you're reading it from the book, you can go with reading 5 pages at a time, like 5 whole pages, like 1, 2, you know, and then just stop for the day, and then the next day read the next 5, and then the next day read the last 6, right? 6 or 7, because it's uneven. So, but at least this way you can kind of get into that habit. It will help to increase your speed with reading because you're not reading to understand it. And that's another thing that I got to talk about too, is that so many times people are telling me, Blue, I'm reading this, but I just don't understand it. This really isn't going to make sense until you're in the real world and you're actually having to apply these things. But what happens when you get into the real world and you start getting into these scenarios where you're coding and you were thinking back to the guidelines, oh yeah, there's a guideline about that. Okay, so I do it this way. That's going to help lead you down the path of selecting the correct codes. So many people jump over this thing, guys. You cannot jump over this. It is tested on us, right? I mean, we're asked these questions all the time. You have to be able to support your selecting a code, and a lot of times this is going to back you up. If you've selected a code and you get with the auditor doesn't agree with you, you can always reference your guidelines as your first line of defense. But you have to know them in order to be able to do that. So that is why I say, when you are reading these, no one can take this knowledge away from you. This is not something that can be bought. This is not something that can be cheated your way through. This is something that when you learn it, and you don't have to memorize it either. I will say that also. Don't memorize it. Don't even try to memorize it. But as you're going through and you're reading, your brain is going to continually remember, okay, we were reading this yesterday. Okay, so we're reading this continuing again today. Your brain is going to start to be able to recall this. So the next week when you read it again, it's going to be like, okay, we know we got to read this stuff. So it's going to recall all of these things. And while you may not understand it, it may not make sense to you, when you start coding, oh yeah, you're going to start seeing that it will make sense to you. You have to trust the process. And so many times people are so resistant to trust the process. And they're like, well, I don't want to waste my time. I did get that email, by the way. Somebody says, well, Blue, I know you say to read the guidelines, but I don't want to waste my time. This is not wasting your time. This is an investment in your time. Trust me. You're going to want to read these, okay? So you can take it reading 5 pages at a time if you want to do it that way. There's 21 chapters. If you want to break it down by chapters 1 through 7, 7 through 14, 14 through 21, you can do that. You can totally do that. However, it makes sense to you to break it down to where it's something that's easily done, and you can do this in your spare time, right? I've talked about before, like if you're at work and you have your lunch break or whatever, you can read during your lunch break. If you have a 15-minute break, I have a 15-minute break in the morning and a 15-minute break in the afternoon at work. So what I do when I'm studying and I'm in that mode is I study during those 15 minutes. Nobody bothers me. Everybody leaves me alone. And, you know, that's what I do during my 15 minutes. And even if it's just reading one page, that's one page that I didn't get a chance to read before. All right. So again, this is why it's so important to read these and to be able to know where to reference this stuff. Because even when you go to take your exam, right, and you're going through and you're thinking, oh my gosh, can I do this? A lot of times when they're asking you those questions, you're going to be able to recall because you've been reading the book. So when you do that, it's getting you more familiar. And even if you can't recall it right away, it's okay because you'll know where to find it. Hey, I saw that in the coding guidelines. Where did I see it? And then you'll be able to flip to exactly wherever you need to be in order to get the information that you need. So again, doing this is a huge investment in your time. And yes, it does take a while. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's so much to read. Yes, but that's what this profession is reading. So I did do some flashcards. I didn't want to write them on here because I tend to write very fast. So sometimes people can't always read my writing. So I wrote them before the show. But some of the things that you can do when you're breaking them down, if you want to break them down by chapter, like go from chapters 1 through 7, and then from 7 to 14 and 14 to 21, you can break down each section and write flashcards if you want to when it talks about different things for that particular chapter. So that's always an option. You don't have to write them all like that, but just kind of give yourself an idea. So what I did was things like this, okay? I'm going to show this here. See, I did code also. People might think, well, what does code also mean? So right here it says 2 codes may be required to fully describe a condition. Okay, so I did that one. And then excludes 2 means not included here. The patient may have both conditions. Okay. And that's just something to help you recall what do those things mean. Excludes 1 means not coded here should not be used at the same time as certain other codes, right? For example, an acute condition versus a congenital condition. If the patient has a congenital condition, they're not going to have an acute condition of that condition, right? Because they already have it. They were born with it. So what do brackets mean? Enclosed synonyms, alternative wording, or explanatory phrases. Okay. What does HIPAA stand for? Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Okay, very important. Sometimes people can't even, sometimes people don't even know what that means. So it's very important for us as medical coders to know what that means. And who are the 4 cooperating parties who approve the ICD-10-CM guidelines? That's AHIMA, the AHA, and CMS and NCHS. So these are just some examples of some flashcards. It doesn't have to be fancy. I just happen to do these really quickly in pen. The last time I demonstrated them, I got some complaints because they said it was bleeding through the index card. These are not for me. It was just an example. And I used a permanent marker last time because I wanted to make sure you guys could be able to see it. So that was the only reason that I did it that way. Normally I do use pen, but it is just me using these flashcards. So however you choose to do it is however you need to get it done. Just get it done. All right. And if you don't want to do flashcards, that's totally fine. Just reading the guidelines is really going to help you. I mean, just even going through that act of reading the guidelines is really going to help. Because when you go to take your certification exam and you're having to read through those op notes, if you have not been diligent in reading, it's going to show, because you're going to get panicked when you see all those words on the page and you're like, I got to hurry up and read this. And then sometimes people just kind of completely lose it. And that's what happens. And sometimes people don't do so well on the test. So you want to set yourself up for success, people. You really want to do that. And so, I mean, I'm going to beg and plead with you guys to always read the guidelines. And it's up to you to take the advice or not. But like I said, that is what I do when I'm doing these, when I'm studying them myself, you know what I mean? That's what I do. And sometimes it's really good to refresh yourself on this. But the simple act of reading and not making it where, oh, I got to memorize the whole thing. Don't do that, because you're wasting precious brain power if you're trying to memorize. Just reading them is going to help you. Believe me, it will help. And not understanding it, it's not something that you need to worry about right now. The simple act of reading it is really going to help you, because not everybody does this, guys. Not everybody does this. And some people will get into this field because they've been able to pass their certification exam and they don't want to put any more effort in. I always strive to make the message known. When you are a medical coder, you have to continue to strive. This is something that is an educational field. It's an intellectual field. And to be able to grasp and understand, this is your foundation. So whether you want to break it down by chapter, that's totally fine. If you want to spread it out over 5 days instead of 3 days, that's totally okay too. It's however much it's going to take for you to get it done, just get it done. And even if you have to print out the guidelines, right? And then just take a certain stack with you, have it at work, and that's what you read at work, and then read the other in the evening later, because everybody has downtime. I know there's people that are on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and all these other places. So all this time you spend socializing, you know, you can be reading your guidelines, you can be studying, you can be reaching out and trying to understand what all these other things are about. This week's episodes are going to be about studying, okay? So I have a lot of different study ideas and tips and videos coming out this week. I will be talking about external causes and how to study for those as well. That will be coming up this week. Also, if you are learning from a book, how to study from a book. So that is my episode for today. I know it is a little short, but that's all right. It doesn't always have to be so long, right? But anyway, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. If you are interested in additional coding exercises, I do have my Patreon channel. Patreon, if you don't know, is a lot like YouTube. And there I post a lot of my coding exercises and my coding quizzes, and I even have puzzles for medical terminology, anatomy, and pathophysiology. They're all there. When I tried to do like demonstrations before about coding on YouTube, you guys just don't watch. So that's why I haven't done it on here. But I am going to try to get more demonstrating, like when I'm telling you guys to read this stuff, so that way you guys can know like what I mean. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this one up. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see y'all on the next video. Bye!